shortly in the course. Those who dislike him won't dislike him because he's black, and those who like him won't like him because he's black. They will like him because of his policies, or they will dislike him because of his policies, but the blackness will recede in importance. When Joe Lieberman was nominated for vice president, it was a very big deal for about 2 days. Oh, first Jew for national office, and then, what will he do on the Sabbath? People are curious, he doesn't go to work, what will he do if there's a vote? He said, I'll vote, and that ended that issue, and from then on it didn't matter. The only identity Joe Lieberman really has in people's mind is as a renegade Democrat. He is far better known for that than he is for being Jewish. And he happens to be a practicing Jew, ironically. So that, by the way, that's the greatness of America. That's the whole point of it. It just doesn't matter. You're from American Indian extraction, we're talking about, or Asian Indian extraction. Bobby Jindal is one of the great, I was going to say one of the great white hopes, but one of the great non-white hopes of the Republican Party, and his parents come from India. We don't care. And foreigners, you don't know, most of you don't know, some do, how racist most humanity is. It was one of the great revelations of my 82 countries that I traveled to very early in my life, how much more racist everybody else was. In America, the left was calling Americans racist. We were even then less racist than anybody else. People all made generalizations about other ethnic groups and other races that you would never hear in America outside of some crazed kook group. And they would say it just generally. And fill in the name of the group are like this, or never conceivably vote for them. In Germany, Turks have moved to Germany for 3 generations. They are still not regarded as Germans. Fluent in German, marry a German in some cases, and still not considered German. They're still called Turks. In the United States, you think of a person who can barely speak English as an American, practically the day they arrive. Right? I mean, the guy who works at the 7-Eleven, my son and I, we used to work out there at 7-Eleven, and the guy, his English was so funny that it was incomprehensible. Even when I asked him where he was from, I didn't understand. So we nicknamed him Professor English. Or a guy who used to live near my home in the Woodland Hills, and he was an older man, and for whatever reason, he would be often on the corner hitching a ride up the hill to go to his house because he couldn't walk, but somehow I guess no relative would drive him. So I picked him up once, and he had the thickest accent and could barely make himself understood. And I just said to him, I said, sir, how long have you been in America? And his answer, 30 years. I didn't understand. How could that be? I spoke more Hungarian in Budapest in a week than this man. Well, I didn't go that far, but you know what I mean. We accept people. It is a unique country. And I was hoping that that's what Barack Obama would concentrate on, because billions around the world were watching. And what an advertisement, what a credit to America he could have brought, as he did in his victory speech the night of the election. That was a magnificent speech, and I said so on the radio, and it really was a terrific speech. Only in America this could happen. None of that in his talk. It was almost depressing. And the truth is, I mean, we have problems in the United States. We say we're at war. Yes, we're at war, but we're doing well in the wars, and we're not losing people in anywhere near the numbers that in Vietnam, let alone World War II. I mean, we've had crises in American history. This is not the Great Depression, folks. This is a time where a lot of Americans are hit financially, but this is not the Great Depression. People are not jumping out of windows. They are not going into Hoovervilles, as they were called correctly or incorrectly, and eating from big garbage dumps and removing the maggots. This not happening in the United States. We have problems. Clearly we have problems. But the speech was of a depressed variety. A friend of mine who was more moderate in politics, more centrist, just texted me today, this speech was joyless. That was a great term. It's exactly what it was. It was bereft. It was almost like, look, I'm your pathologist. You came to me, and look at this problem. Wasn't it like that? I mean, if there's any time to uplift the American people, it's in an inaugural address. More than any other time. Once in 4 years, America is united to a certain extent. It's certainly excited. Some are depressed, but this one, almost everybody was excited. I voted for McCain, but I was excited that there was a black man who was elected. If I'm going to lose, I was happy to lose to a black man because I wanted America to break a barrier that some people thought was a concrete barrier. But none of that. Just, this is a really, really hard time. This is very bad. People are out of work. We're in 2 wars. And you would think that this was FDR, and he does model himself after FDR, which is a thing that does frighten me, and I'll tell you why later. But let me get to the inaugural address itself, which I read about 4 times and listened to during my own show, because it was on at that time. I have a certain advantage when I analyze texts, and that is, which the Chabad folks here will appreciate. I studied in a yeshiva until I was 18 years of age, which is traditional Jewish learning, where half the day is Judaica, half the day are secular subjects. You learn to read texts extremely carefully, and the way you learn it, and it's a great way, it is certainly very well beyond Jewish holy texts, but the way you study a text in traditional Jewish life is you read it and you always ask, why did they use this word and not this word? Why was this added and what, when you could have said something else? And that's part of the reason, by the way, that I read slowly. I read, on the rare occasion I would even read a novel, I read it slowly because I analyze, why did the author use this word and not another word, which is a silly way to read a novel, unless you're writing a thesis on Melville. But I'm stuck. That is the way I read. So I'm so used to it that I find things that I think are often missed by people who read it more traditionally and just read it for the gist of it. Anyway, let me tell you what was good. There were some good lines in it. There were no great lines, but there were some, which is unfortunate, because that's how an address looked. Remember Kennedy's address? Everybody knows. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And there were always memorable moments in most presidents' inaugural addresses, which, as I said, were there to uplift you. Reagan came in at least a financial crisis, and in the middle of a Cold War, which nobody knew where it was going, and could bankrupt the country or whatever. But his was a very cheerful, uplifting thing. All right, so some good stuff. I quote, "In reaffirming the greatness of our nation, we understand that greatness is never a given, it must be earned. Whenever I see the word earned, I cheer up. We live in the age of earning nothing and getting everything. Earning is a conservative word. It's a conservative word, it's a conservative value. The liberal word would be the right to. You have a right to, and the conservative term is, well, no, you should earn that. Before you get X or Y, whatever it might be. This, like so much else, was inaugurated largely in the 60s and 70s. It had to do with love, for example. Love became the be-all and end-all. You got love no matter what, and we came up with the idea, which my parents never heard of, as an example, unconditional love, which became celebrated as one of the greatest things, if not the greatest thing on earth. but it's not the greatest thing on earth. And the idea that we should earn love is almost considered heretical. You'd be tarred and feathered for that concept in a place perhaps like Berkeley or Madison or Manhattan. Earn love? No. But the truth is, in my view at any rate, love should be given unconditionally to little children, and that's pretty much it. After that, I say this, and it's not a reflection on my own life. People like, understandably, totally like say, well, does it come from his own experience? No. The point is, though, that I think it's particularly dangerous in marriage. I think, you see, it's so interesting. This is my style, is to apply ideas to the micro and the macro. So if you're not used to me, I'm not leaving the top. Used to me, you've been inoculated already. But this notion is a very unhealthy notion of you don't have to earn love. We all feel you have to earn the love of somebody that you, for example, are dating, correct? You work very hard to earn the love of the person you might want to marry. Right? You dress accordingly, you smell accordingly, you speak accordingly, you treat the person kindly accordingly, and then over the course of time, and in some cases immediately after marriage, well, I got him or I got her, and then and now they can't leave, especially people, ironically, with traditional conservative values who are very, very loath often to divorce or even hold it a religious sin. Then, nobody has to earn anything because you have tenure. You can't be fired. My point is that it's a very important one and a very uncomfortable one. I acknowledge what it really is. That really beyond little children, there shouldn't be unconditional love. Even for children. We may feel it, but I'm not sure we should necessarily convey it. You mean you can mistreat a parent over and over and over, and they will just keep loving you? Well, like some love machine? Is that really good for you or good for your child? I don't think it is. And so this notion of earn, when he said here, in reaffirming the greatness of our nation, we understand that greatness is never a given, it must be earned. That's correct. We are not great because we're Americans. We are great if we strive to be great, then we are great. So I thought it was a very important line. By the way, it's a line that I'll bet will not be mentioned much at all. Which is so often the case. Look, somebody said to me earlier, are you parsing his speech or giving it more attention than even he did? And I'm sure I'm not. If there's any speech that somebody gives attention to, it's his inaugural address. Next, another good line. For us they fought and died in places like Concord and Gettysburg, Normandy and Quezon. Well, I got to tell you, throwing in Vietnam, along with World War II and the Civil War and the War of Independence, was a very beautiful thing to do, especially for a man of the left. Because the general view of the left is not only, at best, it was a waste of life, and at worst, it was criminal. To have a liberal president, a democratic president, include Vietnam with World War II, the Civil War, and the War of Independence, 3 wars that nobody thinks were unworthy, that's a very big deal. And I was proud of him for doing it. And number 3, to all other peoples and governments, know that America is ready to lead once more. I get a kick out of that whenever that is said, again, by somebody on the left, because they can't stand the notion, from my understanding of what they say, of us leading. That implies that something like an American exceptionalism. I mean, does the new Prime Minister of Belgium get up and say, Belgium must lead once more? Belgians would look at the guy and say, is the man drunk? Lead what? Tulip making? I mean, what? And by the way, this is no insult to Belgium. I don't think anybody in any country gets up and says, lead once more, not the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And yet, the notion of American exceptionalism strikes folks on the left as awful, as a form of imperialism and chauvinism and arrogance. Well, you can't have it both ways. If we're not exceptional, why should we lead? The Prime Minister of Russia doesn't even say that. We will lead once more. Lead what? But if an American says that, even on the left, everybody goes, yeah, that's right, it's time for us to lead again. All right, now, the question is, did we stop leading? This is a separate political question. But it's very, very interesting that a Democratic president at this time would say it's time for America to lead. A fourth and final example of a good line. For those who seek to advance their aims by inducing terror and slaughtering innocents, we say to you now that our spirit is stronger and cannot be broken. You cannot outlast us, and we will defeat you. I love that. When I see him at the Hanukkah party next year, I will tell him you applauded. I have an automatic invitation. This is very funny how life goes. I have an automatic invitation to the White House Hanukkah party because I'm a member of the board of the United States Holocaust Museum, which is a presidential appointment. And so all of its members on the board are automatically invited to the White House for the Hanukkah party, started by George W. Bush. By the way, there was a lot of talk this year at the White House, at the party. Will Barack Obama continue this? It's inconceivable to me that he wouldn't. So I will be there, and I will treasure the photo. Seeing me with the Obamas. It's just one of those things in life, and I'm sure they'll be thrilled to see me. I will be very respectful. I certainly assure you of that. Anyway, you were right to applaud. For those who seek to advance their aims by inducing terror and slaughtering innocents, we say to you now that our spirit is stronger and cannot be broken. You cannot outlast us, and we will defeat you. First, I love the notion that we will defeat anybody coming from somebody who is on the side of the folks who speak about peace and negotiations all the time. Defeat you is a pretty bellicose word, and I like it. I am, like earn, defeat is a conservative verb, and so I like it. By the way, just parenthetically, you'll find this fascinating. I love languages. English is one of the only languages that even has the verb earn. In Latin languages, like French and Spanish, you say, I win money, not I earn money. Ganar is to win. It's not to earn. We translate it to earn because we have that word. But if you ask, did you win a prize, you would still use the same verb for a prize as you would for an income. And in Hebrew, it's the harviach, which means to profit. Not exactly to earn. In German, what was the word that they had? It was also a word that doesn't mean to earn. I forgot what it was. So we have a rare thing. Did you remember? What was it? Deserve. Oh, deserve. Yes. In German, it's I deserve. I deserve, $2,000 a week, and good. Okay, wonderful. But what do you earn? Be that as it may, language is very important in shaping our mentality, and our mentality shapes the language. He used here the word defeat, which I love, and he, even more amazing, terror. Terrorist and terror were not used in 22 Democratic presidential debates. They never talked about this subject. We were fighting, but they never said who we're fighting. And for him to say this, and the way he put it, and slaughtering innocents, and we will defeat you, I was very happy to hear that. Now some lines that I thought were less impressive. This is one of my less favorite ones that were said thousands, hundreds of thousands of times by Democrats in the course of the last few years, and especially in election time. On this day we gather, he said, President Obama, on this day we gather because we have chosen hope over fear. I don't get it. What fear do conservatives or Republicans induce in the American people? I can think of one, Islamic terror. Can anybody, I very rarely ask for audience participation until the Q&A, can anybody name another thing that Republicans induce fear of?
FDR.
He's dead 50 years. Okay, so the truth is, that's pretty much it. For the Democrats to say you induce fear over hope, I wrote in here a little tiny list of the things that fear of is raised on the left in America. Racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, xenophobia, heterosexual AIDS, secondhand smoke, global warming. I mean, the list is endless of things to talk about people are supposed to fear. This is projection. The side that induces fears in America is overwhelmingly from the left. Peanut butter is on it. I mean, it's just endless. It's endless. Okay, that's true. That's fine. Okay, good. All right, that's fair enough. I accept that. Republicans fear socialism. I would hope that Democrats do too. When I grew up, I didn't say that, because when I grew up, Democrats were as anti-socialist as Republicans were. The notion that only Republicans now fear socialism is a statement not about Republicans, but about Democrats. Next. On this day, we come to proclaim an end to the petty grievances and false promises, the recriminations and worn-out dogmas that for far too long have strangled our politics. I have now read this line 6 times, and I don't know what he's referring to. And that drives me a little nuts in life when something is said with great solemnity, but it doesn't mean anything. I'll read it to you again. By the way, there may be some, and I'm not joking about this. Don't tell me now, because I want to get through my talk. Do remember, please, for Q&A. A lot of times, both sides do this. Republicans do it, Democrats do it, liberals do it, conservatives do it. They have a code language for their own people, where when you say X, you really mean, A, B, C, D, and E. And that's fine. I'm not against that. So if there are people here who voted that way, or people, if you didn't, and you know what this code is for, I'm not being at all sarcastic. It may be coded language, but I don't know what the code is. And I do this for a living. We come to proclaim an end to the petty grievances and false promises. What is he referring to? The recriminations and worn-out dogmas. What is he referring to? That for far too long have strangled our politics. When things like this are said, and they don't have a specific meaning, they're called platitudes. And that is problematic. Next one. We will restore science to its rightful place. This is a code, and I think I know what the code was for, stem cell research, an embryonic stem cell, and evolution. I think that, if anybody else knows of a third major thing, I'll talk about that in a moment. I think that these are really what he's referring to, because the battle, quote unquote, with science in the Bush administration that the left points to is about stem cell research. I thought that the president had a beautiful, beautiful, brilliant attitude. You take from those that are made, but you can't make any new ones. The government will not fund, but private enterprise can fund this for the society to produce human beings, or whatever you wish to call a human embryo, for the sake of killing it, even though it may benefit science, is not something we should be involved in. That struck me as a moral thing. Now, I'll never forget, to his everlasting credit, Charles Krauthammer, the conservative, non-religious, I suspect he's an agnostic, non-religious columnist, Charles Krauthammer, is paralyzed. I don't know if you know that. I'm sure you've seen him on television a lot. But he's in a wheelchair. And he was paralyzed while at Harvard Medical School, and I believe a diving accident in a swimming pool. And he's a brilliant, brilliant mind and a brilliant writer. And he wrote a column during the stem cell research issue, which was so noble. And he very rarely, in fact, I never recalled him making reference to his own paralysis. Because he's not in any way self-referential or self-serving, but he made mention, said, I might benefit. I'm the exact person that the left uses. Remember that ridiculous ad showing Superman? What was the actor again?
Reed.
Yeah, Christopher Reeve getting up from his wheelchair. Remember that ad? That ridiculous ad 4 years ago? Oh, if you vote for Kerry, this is what you will get. People will get out of their wheelchairs because of stem cell research. And so he said, I want to get out of my wheelchair. But I don't want to produce human embryos, even if I'll get out of the wheelchair. Because he's a conservative, he asked something that since the 60s, liberalism used to ask this when I was a kid, but it devolved after the 60s, where it's, what's in it for me? Hey, I'm paralyzed, or my kid has some disease, so that's all that matters to me, and I want stem cell research on embryonic stem cells. But he said, I might benefit, and I don't want it. A society has to make a stand at some point about human life. So when he says we will restore science to its rightful place, I'll tell you what I think science's rightful place is, well below society's values. I don't take my values from science. I take my values from what I believe God would like us to do. I take it from the Judeo-Christian value system as represented by Judaism and Christianity in the United States of America. That's my values, and they're higher than science. Simple as that. Science has its place as a tool, not as an end. Now, I'm not comparing it, but to show you the extremes, what the Germans did before the Jews. They killed Germans who were mentally handicapped. Life unworthy of life is what they call Germans. Germans. They first used gas on Germans. Science could do it. Hey, science shows us that they don't appreciate things like we do. They don't like vodka. Let's kill them. That is, if vodka doesn't kill you first. Third act of good down. Now, one other thing that I find fascinating when he says science we will restore science to its rightful place. Really? If you do, President Obama, then you will start inviting dissenting scientists on global warming to the White House. But you don't want science on global warming. You want environmentalist radicalism. You don't want science. The left is, and I say this as a total indictment of the left on this issue. I don't know anyone on the left interested in the science of global warming. They are all interested in the policies that the belief in global warming will lead to. And that is major cuts in energy use, major taxation on oil, major taxation on electricity, and on all forms of energy usage. But folks, I report almost every day. First of all, I report almost every day of a record cold temperature somewhere in the world. Listen, you know that almost every day. I have been 2 years now. By the way, you remember all the Arctic ice that was melting? It's all back. Just want you to know. It's all back, and there are more polar bears than ever. I just want you to know that. And basically, almost everything in Al Gore's film is either untrue or stopped happening or irrelevant to the issue of global warming as a result of man-made carbon dioxide. Same with the Antarctic ice. All back. So I don't believe for a second the left wants science honored. It wants it honored when they agree with it. The day that they have a scientist at the White House to really discuss global warming, like the head of meteorology at MIT, or the head in Japan, the head of its institute on meteorology or whatever it is, have all these people at the White House, and let's have a public debate. Let's have a public debate between the phonies at NASA who told us, remember that this was the third or fourth hottest year last year. Turns out to have been in the last 100. Turns out to have been the 22nd coldest year out of the last 100. And they said, oh, we made a mistake. We read the figures wrong. This is one of the rare times I believe they actually lied. I usually believe people make mistakes. I believe they lied because they have such a vested interest in sending out this doctrine. So I don't believe for a second the left wants a science in a proper place. They want it to use it for whatever idealistic agenda they may have. And global warming could bankrupt us. Why President Obama says on the one hand global warming is the greatest threat and we must do whatever we can, including reorient the American economy, which is what it would take, and charging for these cockamamie new light bulbs. You know, if you drop that light bulb, you have to leave the room because of the mercury in it. Did you know that? These are dangerous bulbs. More dangerous, may I say, than secondhand smoke. Next, the question we ask today is not whether our government is too big or too small, but whether it works. Now, that's a very good sounding line. But frankly, if in Barack Obama's America we no longer ask, is government too big, we will be in big trouble. Well, of course it can be too big. I mean, it's possible for the... What does it mean to work? What does it mean it works? Your definition of works and my definition. Do public schools work? He thinks they work if they're given more money. See, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of his view and the entire Democratic Party and all those aligned with him. The government runs public schools. By and large, most Americans think they're not doing well. So what is the answer? More government. Correct? Not vouchers. That's a conservative, terrible conservative idea. So when government doesn't work, the left says, we don't have enough government. When it works, they say, you see, it works. Isn't that great? So if it works, government's the answer. And if it doesn't work, government's the answer. And that's it. Next, the market's power to generate wealth and expand freedom is unmatched. But this crisis has reminded us that a nation cannot prosper long when it favors only the prosperous. This nation favors only the prosperous, again, in the eyes of those who believe that as long as they are prosperous, they must be favored. This is a Marxist notion. What if the prosperous, let's just imagine a goofy world where most of those who are prosperous, meaning have more material income than others. Let's just imagine this bizarre world where most of them are that way because they worked harder. I can't imagine such a world, but let's just imagine that such a place existed in the universe, where most people who had more money than others actually worked harder, watched less television, read more books, worked more hours, delayed more gratification, got more married. Just imagine. Is that possible? It's just possible. I know it's inconceivable to acknowledge that, but let us just say that it exists. That maybe the nation doesn't favor the prosperous. Maybe hard work favors the prosperous. But we are so saturated with these ideas that emanate ultimately from Marx that nobody bats an eyelash when the President of the United States says it. The United States has favored the prosperous. Half the country doesn't pay a federal income tax. Favors the prosperous? In what exact way? Don't the prosperous pay the vast majority of all taxes paid in the United States of America? How are they favored? But their very existence must mean that they are favored. That's the way the left has thought since Marx. And so this is what he says. Oh, the market's power to generate wealth and expand freedom is unmatched. But this crisis has reminded us that a nation cannot prosper long when it favors only the prosperous. Do you know why we got into the subprime mess? Because we made policies to favor the non-prosperous. That's the terrible fact. People like Barney Frank and others told Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, may they rest in peace. and big banks like, I think it was First Federal Bank of Boston, you guys are redlining blacks. Minorities that come to you for loans are being discriminated against because they're minorities. You better loosen your rules so that poor folks and minorities can also get a home. So, what bank wants to be called racist or anti-poor? They weakened their criteria for a loan, and guess who got hurt the most? The poor. Now, as it happens, everybody got hurt. I assume everyone in this room got hurt. Unless all of your money was in a bank, in a regular savings account, and you lived in an apartment. If you do live such a life, just see me later. I would like to have you on the show. You fascinate me. Since you don't exist, probably, then everybody got hurt, including your speaker. And I was one of the responsible citizens who got hurt. Because I did put 20% down. And I didn't take more than I could pay in a mortgage payment, and got clobbered because I bought during the height and lost everything that I put in plus more. Now I'm not standing before you lamenting life. I'm as happy as I was before. This is my theory on the happiness hour. And my theory on money. I've said this all the time, and I think that the proof is before you. I don't mean it with me. I think it's before anybody. Money makes the happy happier and makes the unhappy unhappier. And that's the way it is. The happy who are already happy, whatever their condition by and large, I'm not talking about starvation, get happier if they have money because they know what to do with it, and they're already happy. The unhappy who get money get unhappier because they thought they would be happy if they got money. Then they get the money, they're not happier, and then they're really unhappy. That's why the unhappiest people are the rich who are unhappy, because they have nothing to look forward to take them out of their unhappiness. Is that clear? Because that was very, very clear. So, everything about that statement is convoluted, and yet, to half this country, they just go, yeah. It's very sad to me. Next one, we reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideals. I assume he's talking about the assault on the Constitution because of the Patriot Act and because of wiretapping foreign phone calls. Folks, the Los Angeles Times, to its credit, had a listing of the number of cases brought by civil libertarians against the Patriot Act. This was about 3 years ago, and it listed, you would think, tens of thousands, because people are very, very sensitive. People, the ACLU would love to bring such cases. It was like 100 or less. It was unbelievable. Out of 300 million people. There's been no assault on your civil liberties. You have to be a hypochondriac to believe that your civil liberties have been assaulted in the Bush administration. Of course they weren't. It's a figment of people's imagination. I'm sorry. I'm a student of totalitarianism. I spent a lot of time in different communist countries. I know when civil liberties are assaulted. They weren't assaulted in the United States. But I'll tell you this. You also have a civil liberty, and sometimes, yes, in real life, sometimes there is a conflict. It's also a civil liberty not to be blown up when you go to the mall. And the president seems to have protected, or the last president seems to have protected that civil liberty rather well. And I'll tell you something. It's already begun. It's already begun. Well, you know what? We'll let the generals decide on waterboarding and so on. It's very easy to call things by bad names and have a black and white view of the world when you're not in power. But when you're in power and you get CIA reports and FBI reports about yet another cell that was caught in New Jersey or Colorado or wherever, you're not so quick to scream our civil liberties have been assaulted, and the Constitution has been shredded. See, this is crying wolf. One day, God forbid, our Constitution might be shredded, but if you announce that it has when it hasn't, then nobody will listen. One of the most powerful essays I ever read is called Tucholsky's Complaint, by the great historian Walter Laqueur. It's about a left-wing German during the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic was from the end of World War I, 1919, until the Nazis came to power in 1933. There were 13, 14 years of relative freedom and democracy in Germany in what was called the Weimar Republic, named after the city of Weimar, where it was founded. There was a guy, Tucholsky, who was a left-wing editor of a very popular newspaper among the elite and the intellectuals, and he kept calling the judges fascists. He kept calling the judges fascists because they were not left-wing enough for his taste. Walter Laqueur, this great historian, said then real fascists were judges, and Tucholsky had no more words left. When you call rape what isn't rape, as has been done too much by the feminist movement, Ms. Magazine defines rape as any sex a woman engages in that she regrets having had the next day. That is the definition of rape. Folks, I was accused of advocating marital rape because I advocated, it's all over the internet. Just go and Google Dennis Prager and marital rape, and you will see website after website on the left saying that I advocated, because I wrote a column, 2 columns last year, on the subject of when a woman is not in the mood, arguing this radical notion that for the sake of a good marriage, and I said it had to be a good marriage where you love the man, where he is a good man, and where mood shouldn't always dictate whether or not you make love, because of the importance of sex to most husbands. That was it, folks. That was my case. And I was charged with marital rape. I even had the bloggers on my show Not coincidentally, neither of them married, both of them young. But it doesn't matter. One had a website called Jezebel, appropriately. I said, I'm just curious, how can you accuse me of advocating marital rape? I even wrote, no is always to be honored. How could you write that? Because it's emotional blackmail. Because you're saying that the husband would be unhappy if he didn't have this. And this causes emotional blackmail in the woman. I mean, so now marital rape has been trivialized, just as rape has been trivialized, and just as fascist has been trivialized, and all of these terms. It's a very unhappy thing that has happened to our language. The Constitution has been shredded. God forbid, and it didn't happen. Next, we are shaped by every language and culture drawn from every end of this earth. It's just not true. With all respect, and I have a deep fondness for Finland, how has Finland shaped American culture? I'll await an answer. What is it? This is a true platitude. It is a meaningless statement, and it's untrue prima facie. On the face of it, it is completely untrue. We are shaped by every language and culture drawn from every end of the earth. Oh, really? What religion has shaped America as much as Judaism and Christianity have? There's nothing that comes close, and it doesn't speak ill about any other religion. They just didn't influence America one-thousandth what Judaism and Christianity did. The Liberty Bell has a quote from the Torah, from the Old Testament, from Genesis. It's not a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, with all respect to Hindus. It's not a quote from the Quran, with all respect to Muslims. It is not a quote from the sayings of the Buddha, with all respect to Buddhism. What is he talking about? It is a meaningless statement. It's a platitude. But your kids learn these platitudes and get an A if they mouth them back to their professors. This is what is so worrisome. That's why nobody finds this to be odd. Of course, what are you kidding? Shaped by Judaism and Christianity more than any other religion. What are you, a xenophobe? I mean, that's exactly what the answer. That's what you're taught in college to answer. You're not taught in college to answer factually, but to attack the decency of the person who made the statement. Now, I use those words on occasion, absolutely, but it's still hard for me to argue Yiddish has shaped America as much as English. Is that a fair statement for all the Yiddish lovers here? I mean, the Chabad folks are raised with Yiddish. But to say that it has shaped American culture as much as English is overstating the case a bit. This was stated these things that I just gave you were stated in an inaugural address, and I ain't done. Now come the naive statements. We cannot help but believe that the old hatreds shall someday pass, that the lines of tribe shall soon dissolve, that as the world grows smaller, our common humanity shall reveal itself. Really? The old hatreds are passing? Name one. What old hatreds are passing? How about the old hatred of anti-Semitism? Yes, it's passed from Europe to the Islamic world. Right on. 5 million people have died in ethnic conflict in the Congo, in the last 5 years. 5 million people. Most Americans don't know anything about it. Most anybody doesn't know anything about it. It doesn't matter because it's African killing African. That doesn't interest anybody. Jew killing Palestinian, that's fascinating. But African killing African in the millions, it puts people to sleep. Old hatreds are passing on. What is he talking about? This is the naive stuff of the left. And as the world gets smaller, the common humanity will assert itself. Folks, it is not because of common humanity that people ever act decently. It's because of common values. not common humanity. What does that even mean, common humanity? We all have livers and pancreas? What does it even mean, common humanity? Now, if you say common humanity, we are all created in the image of God, that's a value. That's not common humanity, that's a common value. It's a little frightening when you see what is said today. Nobody is going to analyze this, though. They'll pick out 2 sweet lines, and everybody will dance because, for the good reason to dance, that we have the first black president, and nobody will actually analyze what was said. And a lot of it's claptrap from a very bright man. To those leaders around the globe who seek to sow conflict. Now, this is a good one, except it sounds good. It sounded good to me when I first heard it, and then I asked the question. To those leaders around the globe who seek to sow conflict or blame their society's ills on the West, know that your people will judge you on what you can build, not what you destroy. It's a great line. It is, first of all, happily, we have a man at the left saying, hello, third world, you can't blame all your ills on the West. That's a very healthy thing, and I salute him for that. But this notion that your people will judge you on what you can build, not what you destroy, is naive. Where exactly has that happened? Did the people in Stalin's Soviet Union judge Stalin on what he destroyed? No way. People loved Joseph Stalin, loved him. Germans loved Adolf Hitler. Italians loved Mussolini. Iraqis and certainly other Arabs adored Saddam Hussein. Now, there were those who hated him and who loved freedom, but they're the minority. I wish that what he said were true, but I don't live in a wish world. I live in the real world. In the real world, dictators aren't all hated. They keep revoting Chabad in, and he keeps destroying their country. And I end his speech with the one really, really, really dangerous naivete. Our security emanates from the justice of our cause, the force of our example, the tempering qualities of humility and restraint. I cannot think of a single example in human history where a country's security emanated from the justice of its cause. I wish. He lives in a wish world, as does the whole left. They wish men and women were basically the same, so that's what they teach kids, that men and women are basically the same, and you give boys tea sets, and you give girls trucks. It's a wish list of how life ought to be. Security doesn't come from having a just cause, it comes from having a strong army. May I say, as a Jew, I think most people would agree that the Jews had a just cause against the Nazis, but they had no security. I wish that just causes produce security. We live in a beautiful world. Does it produce security on a micro level? Burglars won't come to your house if you have a just family. That's what you put on the cover. We have no guns, we have no dogs, we have no locks. But we are kind people inside. As a result, we feel secure. If you find that I am in any way exaggerating what he said, please tell me, because I don't want to exaggerate what he said, because if it's true, then if I'm not saying what is true, then I need to know. I'm not saying on the radio. It's baloney. It's sheer, total baloney that you learn at Harvard. He should have gone to Northridge, and he probably wouldn't have believed it. Unfortunately, he went to Harvard, where you're far more likely to believe claptrap than at Northridge. Or Long Beach State, if that's more local for you. Look, our security emanates from the justice of our cause? American security emanates from the justice of our cause? What is he talking about? There was no example of this in the history of the world. It is like saying the just don't suffer. But that's not true. It takes divine intervention to stop that from happening. It's like I've said over and over and over. Auschwitz was liberated by the military, not by peace activists. The U.S. military has contributed more to world peace than all of the world's peace activists, doubled and tripled and quadrupled. But that's not what you learn in college. You learn a make-believe world. It's a make-believe world, and all of these lines are about make-believe world. So I ask now, I have a couple of questions, and then I'm finished here. Just take your comments and questions. A few questions that I have to which I don't have answers about the Obama presidency. One, what will it ultimately mean to Black America? It's a fascinating question, and I don't have the answer. I interviewed one of the leading black thinkers in the United States from the Manhattan Institute. What was his name? John McWhorter. And it's very helpful. John McWhorter is a very bright man. I've had him on a number of times on a number of issues. He's actually a linguist, and he's at the generally conservative Manhattan Institute. And he came out very early for Barack Obama. So it's not because I agree with him. It's because he will have such a positive impact on Black America, especially its young people, that it's worth it. Which is not a foolish argument, because if we can really have a positive effect in one fell swoop on the black underclass, this would be a magnificent bonus for the United States of America. This is a dysfunctional part of society. And so it would be great, and that was his argument. And he may be right. I don't know. I'm posing this question openly. I don't know. Will many young blacks who might have gone down the road of a gang life, of a drug life, of a non-studying life because they were told that studying is a white thing, but they see now a black intellectual, a constitutional law professor as president of the United States, will they open up a book? It's very possible. I take no position. I'm just posing the question in the hopes that it will happen. I don't know. I make no predictions. What will the Obama presidency ultimately mean to the left is a fascinating question. The left went crazy to get him elected. But what if he doesn't turn out to be a big leftist? Or he's a big leftist in some areas and not in others? What's going to happen? Don't know. How's this? For a question I don't even have an answer to. What does he want to do? I don't know. You don't know, and the left doesn't know. Nobody knows. Which is a fascinating thing. We elected somebody on our desire for change. The country wanted a change, and for very honorable reasons, also wanted a black man as president. Two very understandable sentiments. But nobody really knows him. I feel I know George W. Bush, for better or for worse, far better than I feel when I know Barack Obama. Now, of course, there's been more exposure over time, but I feel I know almost anybody better than I know Barack Obama. I don't know. It was Shelby Steele who wrote a book about Barack Obama, another major black intellect from the Hoover Institution at Stanford, and I had him on a number of times on this and other issues. And he wrote that he has not found himself. After all, his black experience, quote unquote, was negative. The father who abandoned him. His white experience was a mother who loved him and a family that raised him. So he could have easily taken the Tiger Woods attitude. I'm just me. I'm Barack Obama. My identity is not primarily white, not primarily black. It's not a racial. I don't have a racial identity. He decided to have a black identity, which is fine. In my opinion, by the way, with regard to the Reverend Wright, I don't believe that. I do believe that he tuned out during the Reverend Wright's diatribes. I don't believe he had a big impact on his thinking. I may be totally wrong. This is just a guess from afar. I think he was in there and he listened and heard stuff and it bounced off him. But he wanted bona fides. He really wanted to belong to a black community. So you will go to the most black place you can find, and that would be not just a black church, but of a black theologian, where Jesus is depicted as black. I mean, there were a lot of questions about the choice of that church. I mean, it has a lot of goofy ideas in it. But I don't believe that he invited them. If you asked Barack, well, you woke him up at 4 a.m. and said, was Jesus black? I don't think he'd say yes. By the way, just a parenthetical point here. As a student of anti-Semitism, having written a book on it, and then a revised edition of the very same book, I have followed this and written on this and taught it my whole life. There are many perfect indicators of anti-Semitism. Here is one. When your movement denies the Jewishness of Jesus. The Nazis said Jesus was an Aryan. Arafat said Jesus was a Palestinian. And the Reverend Wright and that whole black theology, Afrocentric theology says that Jesus was a black. They've all de-Judaized Jesus. And they were all anti-Jewish. Who emphasized, by the way, on the other side, the same thing holds conversely. The non-Jews who most emphasize the Jewishness of Jesus are the most pro-Jewish non-Jews. Evangelical Christians. You see the bumper sticker, my Lord was a Jewish, I worship a Jewish carpenter. Right? Am I right? Do I have the bumper sticker right? You wouldn't have seen that in Nazi Germany. You wouldn't see that among Palestinian Christians. You wouldn't see that among Afrocentric Christians. So it's another little insight into what's going on. So, my friends, that's the analysis of a speech that, for reasons that I tried to articulate, I had problems with. And I still think will be pushed. However, I think that they're not the number one priorities for him. They are for Nancy Pelosi, but I'm not sure they are for him. I think for him, economic equality is a more driving issue than the law of the sea and the international court, the criminal court, and so on. So we'll see what happens. The appointment of Rahm Emanuel suggests to many people who know more than I about inside politics that he knows his biggest battles will not be with Republicans but with Democrats. Yes. Are you going to bring the mic to somebody? Okay.
You could do your program from almost anywhere. Why do you stay in California?
I happen to like podcasts. I don't have many idiosyncrasies, but that is one of them. I stay in California because this is where the people that I am closest to, as a general rule, live. If everybody that I was close to moved to Utah or Colorado, I moved. And I say that with great sadness. Because I came here and I fell in love with it, like all of you did, or most of you came from somewhere else, unless you're the next generation after me. But it has come to a point where
They are driving people away, the people who produce the most. But after all, if you produce the most, what do you consider? What was that word?
Prosperous.
Prosperous, yeah. You know, anyway, it's a very good question, but it's people who keep me here. Yes. Right now, and the real estate. Right now, what am I going to do? Buy a tent in Utah? Yes.
Mr. Prager, can I ask you to change hands and go back to your Columbia Russian communist economics hat and analyze some of the things that you analyzed through your Talmudic word analysis? Well, the first one, dogma, when he was talking about dogma, wasn't he really saying that the dogma of capitalism is something that we have to take a hard look at, and if socialism will suit us better, let's go there. Then when you went to when the government works, being the criteria, not its size, isn't that also should have thought of socialism? And then when he's talking about the market, and it prospers not when the prosperous prosper, but when everybody prospers, again, isn't he then using the criteria of socialism as his basis? And on and on each one of these.
Except for the dogma one. Look, he would not call it socialism because it's still a dirty word among too many Americans. But the very look, you're really eloquently summarizing in a different way my point that when you say, let's never ask anymore, is government too big? Well, then that means it's not possible for the government to be too big. That's what a president of the United States has asserted. Just 30 years or so after a president said the problem is too much government.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a problem. Yes, please.
Yeah, Israel is fighting for its very existence, yet I find it so troubling that I see the media portraying them as the aggressor on so many occasions. I want to hear your comments on that, please.
The media portray Israel as the aggressor because, first, the media are left of center, and on the left of center, the world is not divided on moral grounds. It is divided on power grounds, on racial grounds, and on material grounds. And the proof is your kids learn race, gender, class. Not good and evil, but race, gender, class explains the world. So in the Middle East, you have prosperous, first world, pro-America Israel versus non-prosperous, third world, non-white, even though half of Israel is not white, Palestinians. And therefore, and one is strong and one is weak. So the question, right and wrong, is not asked. Who is strong and who is weak? Who is the underdog? Who is the top dog? Who is first world? Who is third world? Who is white? Who is colored? And those are the questions that are asked by the media, and therefore Israel is the villain. Israel will get a lot of sympathy if, God forbid, it is destroyed. Then the media will have, oh my God, another Holocaust, this is awful, can't believe this happened, this is really terrible. But Golda Meir said that she'd rather be unpopular and alive than popular and dead. And I find a lot of coherence to that view. Who's got the mic? Not that the mic is working, yes.
I guess the only thing I wanted to say was...
Yeah, maybe we'll knock that mic out there.
Well,
just yell, go ahead.
I feel like if Obama does nothing, like Bush already won the war, and the economy is going to bounce back in 4 years. So even if he sits there and does nothing, I mean, how are we going to... Do you think Americans will actually realize that a lot of this stuff was actually done by the previous president?
No. Well, if Obama does nothing, look, the war is already won, you're saying, in Iraq. And the economy is likely to bounce back anyway, even if he does nothing. Look, frankly, I wish he did nothing. If $700 billion to the banks is not going to do anything, I don't want to really go into the trillion-dollar area of government control of the economy. We went on a spending binge of money we didn't have, and a lot of us did. Well, we should be honest about that. A credit card culture, and we left the notion because we were told there's no reason not to go into debt because your house will cover it for you. And it did for quite a number of years, but we forgot to read Genesis, and after 7 fat years, you get 7 lean years. I mean, it's unbelievable to read that, but maybe nobody dreamt about fat cows eating, or skinny cows eating fat cows, so we didn't learn the lesson. But eventually we would bounce back. We have to bounce back. The world wants us to bounce back, because if Americans don't buy their products, the world is in bad shape. That's the reason China buys our bonds, and basically, keeps us supporting. We have a symbiotic relationship economically with China. So frankly, I wish that he would. The problem, again, as the brilliant Krauthammer pointed out, we thought that all the government spending Obama wanted to do is now not possible because of all the debt that the government has incurred. Said, on the contrary, now that $700 billion has been spent, the numbers don't mean anything, and he will spend that again because of the emergency we're in and the precedent of what we did for the banks. So it's very worrisome on what will be done monetarily. Very, very worrisome. Yeah. Let me just call it go. Back there, please, in the another time zone, please.
I have a question. What do you think is going to happen to our intelligence program under him? That he wants to continually tie the CIA's hands.
I think that his instinct, this is all my conjecture, I don't have any more data than you do. I think his instinct is to keep the intelligence agencies as strong as they are now, to the extent that they are strong. But it is the instinct of the left wing of the Democratic Party, like under Frank Church years ago, to rein them in. So that's why I say one of the big battles for Barack Obama will be with the left of his own party. But he doesn't want to happen to him what happened to Bill Clinton when Bill Clinton, in his first 2 years, followed the left wing of his party and then lost Congress. On the other hand, he also he's conflicted. He doesn't want to lose Congress in 2 years. On the other hand, his model is FDR. Do everything you can in the first 100 days while people are still feeling good about you and think that the government has the answers to their thing. So he's torn. I think his speech showed he's torn because it was largely disjointed sentences. They all had, or most had some meaning, but they weren't connected. Back there, please. Yes.
Hey, Dennis, thanks. On October 30th, 2008, Barack Obama said that we were 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. When I heard those words, they were ominous to me.
Right.
I want to know what you thought about that.
Well, on those words that he used a few days before the election were about to fundamentally transform America, I not only did a lot of broadcasts, I wrote my column on that. Those scared the living daylights out of me. I don't want to transform this country. I want to fix it where it's broken. I don't want to transform it. See, that's a difference. But there is a utopian strand within the left, very powerful force within the left. A dear friend of mine, Rabbi Joseph Telushkin, had a great line many years ago. He said, conservatives tend to romanticize the past, and liberals tend to romanticize the future. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The future, then there will be no hatred. And like he wrote, then people will see these hatreds will die, and people will see their common humanity. They live in a fairy tale world. Why will that happen? What will they see that they didn't see in the past? Okay. Yes.
One of the things that's really eating at me has to do less so with Mr. Obama's, President Obama's policies, but more so related to his character. Now, I appreciate you addressing the Reverend Wright issue, but there's so many other issues related to his judgment, his choice of Resto, heirs, all those, and yet our country is fawning over this man. What does it say about the future of this country, given that these things are almost being fixed?
I don't know what it says about the future. I didn't find his choice. I said this in the debates with people on the left. I wrote this. I said, look, we don't know anything about Barack Obama except who he's hung out with. And I'm not sure you want, I don't know, I didn't write this there, but in fact, I'm not sure if all this is all you knew. I'm not sure you want your daughter to date a guy. I mean, well, what do we know about Resco and former terrorists and Wright? Well, that doesn't speak too well. On the other hand, he has a presence that is not radical, that bespeaks of a deep passion. Look, he did invite the Reverend Warren. What was his first name? Rick Warren. I mean, that was a gutsy thing to do. Absolutely. I mean, so you have to. That's why I say, the tea leaves go in a lot of directions. So nothing will surprise you. He may turn out. See, I don't know what he most wants. Maybe he most wants to prove, as many children whose father was a loser and who abandoned him, that he's a real man. That may, for all I know, that is, and by the way, that's fine. That wouldn't trouble me much. Maybe these are look, we're all motivated by something psychological or idealistic. I don't know how much these politics motivate him, and we'll find out. But Rick Warren and some of the other appointments, again, Krauthammer had an explanation. He said on those things he doesn't care. He could, basically couldn't care less about same-sex marriage. He couldn't care less about changing the security apparatus. He wants to change the economy of the United States. And if Krauthammer's right, then we are in for a ride. I'll take a few more here, and yes.
On the latter side, you've had an opportunity to listen to a number of speeches. I've listened to you on the radio talk about the words that he would use. I don't necessarily find him to be a very happy guy in his speaking. And I know today was a very serious day, but then you had the juxtaposition of George Bush giving his return speak to the crowds in Crawford, Texas. And, and there was like silliness and things like that. And I know two different occasions, but I'm just wondering, how do you, or do you see a happiness, a settledness about himself that makes him, well, your opinion?
The only thing that I could say about Barack Obama as a person, with any degree of certitude, because I really admit I don't know him, is that he has a preternatural self-confidence. Folks, I have a lot of self-confidence. I am sheepish compared to him. I watch him, and as a public figure, though obviously not a presidential candidate myself, I am absolutely amazed at the assuredness, the certitude. I mean, I have thought somewhat highly of my own self, and I hope in deserved ways, and not highly in other ways. I don't know if at his age I would have thought I could be president of the United States with just that background and that age, that I felt that I had the wisdom. But he was absolutely certain of that, is certain of that now. But you know what? That may turn out to be great. We don't know. If he has that confidence, then I'd much rather have a very secure man as president than an insecure man as president. So that's why I say, I know you're trying to get out of me, but you can't get out of me. I don't know enough, nor do you, about the man. And so we will see. Again, it's just the only thing that I can tell. Is he happy? Look, I'm a happiness maven. I admit it. I think I know a lot about happiness. He does not strike me as an unhappy man. He doesn't. And that's good too. I don't want an unhappy man. He may be, by the way, what you see is what you get for all we know. This is who I am, and frankly, I have one major agenda, and that is equality and transforming the economy of the United States to be more like Western Europe. That's a nightmare for me, because the way the economy functions has an effect on people's values. I think socialism produces worse people, because it produces entitled people. And the word earn stops to be a big one in one's vocabulary. You breathe, this is what you get. I was raised in a religious Jewish culture, and it is very different from a left-wing culture, not just because of the God-centeredness, but because of the rights versus obligation-centeredness. Jewish law, which I was raised with, is obligations-oriented. The left is rights-oriented. These are your rights. ACLU has put out a whole series, dozens of books. These are your rights as an immigrant. These are your rights as a woman. These are your rights as a black. These are your rights as a minority. These are your rights as whatever it is. I was raised that the way to make a better world is to teach people moral obligations, not to just drum into them their rights. It's a different view of how to make a good world. Let me take one more. Back there, please. Yeah, sorry, all the way in the back.
Yeah, can you speak on something that's near and dear to your heart and mine as a listener? Do you think the fairness doctrine is going to come to fruition?
Well, if it does, and any of you have work, I will apply. I'm a responsible worker, and then you may find a job for you. The question was about, do I think the fairness doctrine will come to pass? Nancy Pelosi would like it, Harry Reid would like it, and I'm sure many of the other leading lights use the term. The fairness doctrine is a doctrine that was undone by Ronald Reagan. In the very early days of radio, there was a doctrine called the fairness doctrine, which stipulated that if you give X amount of time to one side in a political debate, you have to give the same amount of time to the other side. There was no internet. The TV was not nearly what it was. There was certainly no cable television. There was no proliferation of media like you have today. And whether it was a good idea or not, what it meant was there was no talk on radio. Not left wing, not right wing. Because for no station is it profitable to have left-wing and right-wing talk. There are left-wing stations and there are right-wing stations. So what this would do would end talk on radio, because nobody would find it feasible anymore. And they want to do it because the left controls the schools, the colleges, the universities. By the way, your kids, like I have a kid in high school, my youngest child, and they were all let out of class today to watch the inauguration, which I have no problem with if 4 years ago they also let them watch the inauguration of George W. Bush. The chances of that having happened 4 years ago, however, I would assume are zero. And it is just typical of what happens in schools. Kids are shown the Al Gore film, Inconvenient Truth, but they're never shown any of the films, including one